Marcus Webb sat at his station, watching the endless stream of data flowing across his screens. The deep space monitoring station Prometheus floated quietly in the darkness, far from Earth and any human colony. His job was simple but important. Listen for signals from space and report anything unusual. For 3 years, Marcus had heard nothing but cosmic background noise and the occasional message from human ships. Space was mostly silent, which made sense since humans had never found other intelligent life. That changed at exactly 1432 ship time, when his equipment picked up something impossible. The signal was weak and broken, coming from a star system 47 light-years away. But it carried mathematical patterns that could only mean one thing. Intelligent life was trying to communicate. Marcus felt his heart race as he called Admiral Rosa Blackwood to the communications center. "Admiral, you need to see this," Marcus said, his voice shaking with excitement. The tall, stern woman arrived within minutes, followed by Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's expert on alien languages. Admiral Blackwood studied the signal data with sharp eyes. "Are you certain this isn't some kind of equipment malfunction?" "No, ma'am," Marcus replied. "The patterns are too complex and deliberate. Someone is sending this." Dr. Vasquez worked quickly to decode the mathematical sequences. Her face grew pale as she translated the numbers into meaning. "Admiral, this is a distress call. The biological readings show a dying population. Millions of lives are at stake." The signal continued for hours, and slowly the humans began to understand its terrible message. The beings calling themselves the Kythera were under attack. Their peaceful world of Verdania was being destroyed by something called the hegemony, a massive empire that viewed other species as nothing more than resources to harvest. "They're herbivores," Dr. Vasquez explained as she decoded more of the transmission. "Their entire culture is built around growing things and preserving life. They've never fought a war because they've never needed to." Admiral Blackwood studied the translated message with growing concern. "What does the hegemony want with them?" "Their planet has rare minerals," Marcus said, reading from his screen. "But the Kythera won't give them up peacefully, so the hegemony plans to simply kill everyone and strip mine the world." The most chilling part of the message was its timeline. The Kythera had detected massive hegemony ships moving into their system. In 72 hours, orbital bombardment would begin. Every living thing on Verdania would be dead within a week. Captain James Pike arrived as the team worked to fully decode the signal. The experienced military officer had fought in the border wars against human pirates, but his face showed shock as he learned about the alien crisis. "Admiral, we have to do something," Captain Pike said. "We can't just let genocide happen when we have the power to stop it." "Can we stop it?" Admiral Blackwood asked. "We know nothing about hegemony military capabilities. This could be a trap." Dr. Vasquez shook her head as she continued her work. "The biological data is too detailed to fake. These readings show real populations under real stress. Fear, panic, desperation. You can't manufacture that kind of data." As the hours passed, more disturbing information emerged from the Kythera signal. The hegemony wasn't just a local threat. They controlled hundreds of star systems and had destroyed dozens of other species. Their military doctrine was simple: demand submission or face total extermination. "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing to a new section of the transmission. "They're sending us star charts." The charts showed hegemony territory spreading like a cancer across their region of the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds marked as harvested or processing. But what made everyone in the room go silent was the trajectory of hegemony expansion. "They're heading toward human space," Captain Pike said quietly. "Maybe not this year or next year, but eventually they'll reach our colonies." Admiral Blackwood studied the charts carefully. The Kythera weren't just asking for help. They were warning humanity about a threat that would eventually reach Earth itself. The hegemony's expansion pattern was clear and predictable. After Verdania, they would move to the next system. Then, the next, slowly working their way toward human territory. "How long do we have?" the Admiral asked. Dr. Vasquez ran calculations on her computer. Based on their current expansion rate, they'll reach the outer human colonies in approximately 15 years, Earth itself in maybe 30 years. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew the answer, and it was terrifying. Not only were they not alone, but they were facing an empire that had already destroyed countless civilizations. "There's more," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Cathara are sending technical data about hegemony ships and weapons. They're giving us everything they know about how to fight them." Admiral Blackwood realized the desperate courage this represented. The Cathara knew they were probably going to die, but they were using their last hours to give humanity a chance to survive. The technical data showed hegemony ship designs, weapon capabilities, and most importantly, weaknesses. "They're doing this for us," Dr. Vasquez said, tears in her eyes. "They know we can't save them in time, but they're trying to save us." Captain Pike studied the technical readouts with a military officer's eye. "These ships are powerful, but they're designed to fight other civilizations like the Cathara, peaceful species that don't understand real warfare." "What do you mean?" Admiral Blackwood asked. "Look at their ship designs," Pike explained. "Heavy weapons, thick armor, but they're slow and built for intimidation. They're designed to overwhelm enemies who surrender rather than fight. But what if they faced an enemy that refused to give up?" Admiral Blackwood understood immediately. Humanity had emerged from Earth, a world so dangerous that just surviving required constant struggle. Human history was filled with wars, disasters, and conflicts that had shaped them into something unique. While other species might surrender when faced with overwhelming odds, humans had a different response. "We need to contact Earth immediately," the Admiral decided. "The Terran Defense Council needs to see this." As Marcus prepared the transmission to Earth, Dr. Vasquez made one final discovery in the Cathara signal. Hidden in the mathematical patterns was a simple message in basic pictographs, images that any intelligent species could understand. The message showed a small figure standing in front of a much larger one. The larger figure held weapons and looked threatening. The smaller figure held no weapons but stood firm, refusing to move. Below the images were symbols that Dr. Vasquez translated as, "Help us stand." Admiral Blackwood looked at the message for a long time. The Cathara weren't asking humans to save them. They were asking humans to teach them how to fight. How to stand up against impossible odds. How to be brave when facing extinction. "Send everything to Earth," she ordered. "Full priority transmission, and send a message to Captain Pike's ship. Tell them to prepare for immediate departure." "Where are we going, Admiral?" Pike asked. "To prove that some things are worth fighting for no matter the odds," she replied. As the transmission raced toward Earth at faster-than-light speed, the Cathara signal continued broadcasting from their dying world. Somewhere across the galaxy, an entire species waited in the darkness, hoping that the universe contained at least one race willing to stand with them against the approaching night. The signal carried across space, carrying with it the desperate, hope that someone, somewhere, would hear their plea and choose to act. That someone would prove that evil could be stopped, that the strong could protect the weak, and that courage could triumph over cruelty. Time was running out, but the message had been sent. Now humanity would have to decide what kind of species they truly were. The emergency meeting room in Geneva had never seen anything like this. President Lou Harrison sat at the head of the table, surrounded by the most powerful military and scientific minds on Earth. The Cathara transmission played on the main screen, filling the room with alien voices pleading for help across impossible distances. General Thomas Kane, head of all Terran military forces, studied the data with the cold eye of a professional soldier. Beside him, Commander Jessica Rivers from Special Operations took notes on hegemony ship designs. Dr. Alex Morrison, Earth's leading expert on alien technology, worked frantically to understand the weapon specifications the Cathara had provided. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," President Harrison said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. "An alien empire is about to commit genocide against a peaceful species, and after that, they'll eventually reach human space." "That's correct, Mr. President," Admiral Blackwood confirmed via video link from the Prometheus station. "The hegemony expansion pattern is clear. They're not just a local threat." General Kane leaned forward in his chair. "What are we actually dealing with in terms of military capability?" Captain Dmitry Volkov from Intelligence Division had spent the last 8 hours analyzing every piece of data from the Cathara signal. The hegemony controls approximately 400 star systems. Their military consists of standardized ship classes designed for intimidation and overwhelming firepower. "How do they compare to our forces?" Commander Rivers asked. Dr. Morrison looked up from his analysis. "Their individual ships are more powerful than ours, but they're designed to fight civilizations that surrender quickly. Look at these specifications. Massive energy weapons, heavy armor, but relatively slow and inflexible." "The Cathara data suggests something interesting," Volkov continued. "The hegemony has never faced serious resistance. Every species they've encountered either surrendered immediately or was destroyed so quickly they couldn't adapt their tactics." President Harrison studied the star charts showing hegemony territory. "What makes us think we could do better?" "General." Kane smiled grimly. "Because we're from Earth, sir. The Cathara data includes biological profiles of various species the hegemony has conquered. None of them evolved on worlds like ours." "Explain," the president ordered. "Earth is what xenobiologists call a death world," Dr. Morrison said. "High gravity, unstable weather, dangerous wildlife, constant natural disasters. Most planets that develop intelligent life are much more stable and peaceful." Commander Rivers nodded. "The physical requirements for surviving on Earth made us stronger, faster, and more resilient than most alien species. But more importantly, it shaped our psychology." "How so?" President Harrison asked. "We're the only species in the Cathara database that developed through constant warfare," General Kane explained. "Most intelligent life emerges from cooperative, peaceful environments. Humans are pack hunters who learn to survive by fighting everything, including each other." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Humanity's violent history, often seen as a source of shame, might actually be their greatest advantage against the hegemony. "There's another factor," Admiral Blackwood added from the screen. "Human ships and tactics are designed around our biology. We can handle G-forces and acceleration that would kill most aliens." Dr. Morrison pulled up technical comparisons on his tablet. "The hegemony ships have internal gravity systems and cushioning designed for fragile species. Our pilots routinely endure conditions that would incapacitate their crews." "What about their numbers?" President Harrison asked the crucial question. "They have us outnumbered," General Kane admitted. "But look at their battle doctrine. They rely on massive formations and overwhelming firepower. They've never had to deal with small, fast ships using hit-and-run tactics." Commander Rivers studied the hegemony ship designs with a tactical expert's eye. "These vessels are designed to intimidate and destroy fixed targets. They're not built for dogfighting or rapid maneuvering." "You're suggesting we can outfight them?" the president asked. "I'm suggesting we can fight them in ways they've never encountered," Kane replied. "Every war they've fought has been against peaceful species with limited military experience. They have no experience fighting an enemy that refuses to surrender." Captain Volkov brought up the timeline display. "We have 46 hours before the hegemony reaches Verdania. If we're going to act, we need to decide now." President Harrison looked around the table. What exactly are you proposing? Operation Thunderstrike, General Kane said. We send our entire available fleet to Verdania, not to win a conventional battle, but to show the hegemony that humanity won't be intimidated. That's incredibly risky, Dr. Morrison pointed out. We'd be committing our entire military to save aliens we've never met. We'd be committing our military to stop a threat that will eventually reach Earth anyway, Commander Rivers corrected. Better to fight them 47 light-years away than in our own solar system. Admiral Blackwood's image leaned forward on the screen. There's something else, Mr. President. The Kithara aren't asking us to save them. They're asking us to teach them how to fight. What do you mean? Hidden in their transmission is a request for military advisors and weapons. They want to learn human combat tactics. They're willing to fight for their world if someone shows them how. President Harrison studied the faces around the table. Each person represented years of military experience and strategic thinking. But this decision would affect all of humanity's future. General Kane, how many ships can we deploy immediately? 200 vessels, including our newest dreadnoughts. It's everything we have except for the home defense fleet. Crew requirements? Approximately 50,000 personnel, all volunteers only. No one goes into this without choosing to. Commander Rivers added, We'd need to modify our weapons and tactics for space combat against unknown alien technology. But the Kithara data gives us a significant advantage. Time frame? 36 hours to reach Verdania if we push our engines to maximum, Admiral Blackwood reported. We'd arrive with just hours to spare. President Harrison stood and walked to the window overlooking Lake Geneva. Outside, people went about their normal lives, unaware that their species had just discovered they weren't alone in the universe, and that they were facing an enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations. Mr. President, Dr. Morrison said quietly, there's one more thing. The Kithara transmission includes cultural data about the hegemony. They don't just destroy species, they erase them completely. No survivors, no records, no memory that they ever existed. Genocide, the president said. Complete extinction, Morrison confirmed. If we don't act, the Kithara will simply disappear as if they never existed, and eventually, so will we. President Harrison turned back to the table. General Kane, what are our chances of success? Honestly, sir, unknown. We've never fought aliens before. But I know one thing. If we don't fight them now, we'll have to fight them later under much worse circumstances. And if we lose, then at least we'll have shown the galaxy that some species refuse to go quietly into extinction, Commander Rivers said. Maybe that example will inspire others to resist. The president looked around the table one final time. The Kithara are asking us to stand with them against impossible odds. They're asking us to risk everything for people we've never met. Yes, sir, General Kane confirmed. Then we do what humans have always done when faced with bullies, President Harrison decided. We stand up and fight back. Approve Operation Thunderstrike. Launch the fleet. The room erupted in activity as officers began coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Across Earth, ships prepared for departure and crews volunteered for a mission that might save an alien species or doom humanity itself. But as messages flashed between Earth's military bases, one disturbing piece of intelligence reached Captain Volkov's desk. Intercepted hegemony communications suggested they had detected unusual activity in human space. The element of surprise was already compromised. Even worse, the communications mentioned something called protocol extinction, a weapon specifically designed to sterilize Deathworlds and their dangerous inhabitants. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Verdania system, and Admiral Victoria Storm immediately understood why the Kithara were dying. 500 hegemony warships formed a perfect blockade around the planet, their massive hulls gleaming like deadly stars against the black of space. My God, whispered Lieutenant Maya Chen Okafor, from her position at the tactical station aboard the dreadnought Indomitable. "How are we supposed to fight that?" Admiral Storm studied the enemy formation with the calm expression of someone who had spent 30 years preparing for impossible battles. Around her, the bridge crew worked efficiently despite the overwhelming odds they faced. "Commander Johansson, engine status?" she asked. "All ships report ready, Admiral," replied Commander Eric Johansson from the engineering station. "Fusion. Drives at maximum efficiency." Captain Ben Torres led the fighter squadrons from his command ship, Valkyrie. His voice crackled over the communication system as he reported his forces ready for combat. Behind him, 200 human vessels spread out in attack formation. Small compared to the hegemony fleet, but carrying the hopes of two species. "Hegemony vessels are hailing us," reported the communications officer. "Put them through, Admiral," Storm ordered. The main screen filled with the image of an alien commander. The being looked vaguely reptilian, with scaled skin and cold yellow eyes. When it spoke, the translation system rendered its words in emotionless human speech. "Unknown vessels, you will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. This system is under hegemony control." Admiral Storm stepped forward. "I am Admiral Victoria Storm of the Terran Defense Force. We're here to prevent genocide." The alien's eyes widened with what might have been surprise. "You are the Deathworld species, the Cathara. Contacted, your interference is not permitted." "Since when do you get to decide what's permitted in free space?" Storm replied. "Since we became strong enough to take what we want," the hegemony commander said. "Your ships are impressive for primitives, but you are outnumbered more than 2-1. Withdraw or share the fate of the plant eaters." Admiral Storm smiled coldly. "Has anyone ever told you that humans don't respond well to threats?" She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "All ships, this is Admiral Storm. Today we're going to teach the galaxy that some fights are worth having, no matter the odds. Engage all targets!" The battle began with a massive exchange of energy weapons that lit up space like a miniature star. Hegemony ships opened fire with their massive beam weapons, expecting to destroy the smaller human vessels quickly. Instead, they watched in shock as the human ships scattered in all directions, moving with an agility no alien vessel could match. "They're fast," Lieutenant Chen Okafor reported, tracking enemy movements. "But they can't change direction quickly with those massive ships." Captain Torres led his fighter squadrons in a diving attack that would have killed most alien pilots. The human fighters pulled G-forces that crushed their bodies into their acceleration couches, but they had trained for exactly this kind of punishment. "Razor Squadron, follow my lead," called pilot Rachel Martinez, known to her fellow pilots as Razor for her precision flying. Her squadron dove between two hegemony capital ships, firing missiles at point-blank range before spinning away at angles that defied physics. The hegemony had never seen anything like human space combat. Where they used massive formations and overwhelming firepower, humans fought like wolves, fast, aggressive, and completely unpredictable. "Their ships are breaking formation," reported Commander Johansson. "They don't know how to respond to our tactics." But the humans were taking losses too. Hegemony weapons were incredibly powerful, and when they connected, human ships simply vanished in bursts of superheated plasma. For every alien ship destroyed, humanity lost precious vessels and crew. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," the communications officer announced. The screen showed a Cathara, tall, slender, with green-tinted skin and large eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. The being spoke with desperate hope. "Human warriors, I am Kira Okafor, speaking for all Cathara. We are monitoring your battle and providing what assistance we can. Our sensors are sending you targeting data for the hegemony command ships." "Thank you, Kira," Admiral Storm replied. "Are your people ready to fight for your world?" "We are learning quickly from your example," Kira responded. "Our ships are small, but we have many of them. We await your signal." The battle raged for hours, with human ships darting through the hegemony formation like angry insects. The aliens had superior firepower, but they couldn't adapt to human tactics quickly enough to gain the upper hand. Then everything changed. "Admiral, massive energy signature detected," Lieutenant Chen Okafor called out, her voice tight with fear. "It's coming from the hegemony flagship." On the main screen, a weapon unlike anything humans had ever seen began to power up. The device was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and it pulsed with energy that made space itself seem to bend around it. "It's a planet killer," Commander Johansson said quietly. "The readings are off the charts." Admiral Storm realized with horrible clarity what was happening. The hegemony had grown tired of the human resistance and decided to simply destroy Verdania while the battle raged. In minutes, billions of Cathara would die. "All ships, priority target is the planet-killer weapon," she ordered. "Everything we have, right now." But the weapon was too well protected. Hegemony ships formed a wall around. Their flagship and human vessels couldn't break through in time. That's when Captain Torres made his decision. "Admiral, this is Torres. I'm making a run at the weapon." "Negative, Captain. You'll never make it through their defenses." "Maybe not, but I can get close enough." Torres's voice was calm, despite what everyone knew was a suicide mission. "My ship's fusion drive can be overloaded. If I can ram the weapon while the drive goes critical..." Admiral Storm understood immediately. A fusion drive explosion at point-blank range might be enough to destroy the planet killer, but Torres would die in the attempt. "Ben, there has to be another way," she said. "There isn't time, Admiral. Tell my family I was proud to serve with the finest crew in the galaxy." Captain Torres turned his ship toward the hegemony flagship and pushed his engines beyond their safety limits. The Valkyrie accelerated toward certain destruction, weaving through enemy fire with impossible skill. "Multiple hull breaches," Torres reported, his voice growing weaker. "Life support failing, but I'm almost there." Pilot Martinez and her squadron tried to escort Torres through the enemy defenses, but they were overwhelmed by hegemony fighters. One by one, the human escorts fell until Torres flew alone toward his target. "Fusion drive at critical overload," Torres transmitted. "Tell the Cathara that some things are worth dying for." The Valkyrie struck the planet-killer weapon at maximum velocity just as its fusion drive exploded. The detonation lit up space like a new sun, and when the light faded, both the weapon and Captain Torres were gone. The hegemony fleet reeled from the loss of their superweapon. In that moment of confusion, Admiral Storm pressed her advantage. "All ships, full assault. Make Torres's sacrifice count." The human fleet attacked with renewed fury, fighting not just for the Cathara, but for their fallen comrade. At the same time, Kira Okafor's voice filled the communication channels. "Cathara ships launching now. We fight for our world." Hundreds of small Cathara vessels rose from the planet's surface. They were no match for hegemony warships individually, but they fought with the desperate courage of a species that had nothing left to lose. The tide of battle began to turn. Human tactics, combined with Cathara numbers and determination, slowly pushed the hegemony forces back. But the cost was enormous. Nearly half the human fleet was destroyed or disabled. As the hegemony ships finally began to retreat, Admiral Storm received one final transmission from the alien commander. "This is not over, Deathworlders. The hegemony now knows about your species. We will return with a force large enough to sterilize your entire civilization." "We'll be waiting," Admiral Storm replied. The alien fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of the greatest space battle in galactic history. Verdania was saved, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. As rescue ships searched for survivors among the debris, Kira Okafor appeared on the main screen again. "Admiral Storm, how can the Cathara ever repay this debt?" "Help us prepare for what's coming," Storm replied. "Because they'll be back, and next time they'll bring everything they have." The explosion that claimed Captain Torres and the planet-killer weapon still glowed in space like a dying star. Admiral Storm watched the light fade while medical ships searched the debris field for survivors. The cost of victory was written in the twisted metal of destroyed vessels and the silence where voices once spoke. "Casualty reports coming in," Lieutenant Chen Okafor said quietly. Her tactical board showed the brutal mathematics of war. 40% of the human fleet destroyed or too damaged to fight. Thousands of crew members dead or missing. But the battle wasn't over. "Admiral, we're detecting movement from the remaining hegemony ships," Commander Johansson reported. "They're regrouping near the system's edge." On the main screen, the surviving alien vessels formed a new battle line. Even reduced by human attacks, they still outnumbered the battered human fleet. Admiral Storm realized the hegemony commander was preparing for one final assault. "They're not retreating," she said grimly. "They're going to try to finish us." Down on Verdania's surface, Kira Okafor worked frantically to coordinate her people's defenses. The Cathara had watched humans fight and die to save their world. Now they prepared to return that sacrifice with interest. "All Cathara vessels, this is Kira," she transmitted to the hundreds of small ships rising from the planet. "The humans showed us how to fight. Now we show them how much we've learned." Commander David Kim led the human boarding parties that had captured several hegemony ships during the battle. His teams moved through alien corridors, securing prisoners and gathering intelligence. What they found was disturbing. "Admiral, you need to see this," Kim reported from inside a captured command ship. "The hegemony databases contain records of their entire empire. They've destroyed over 300 species. The captured data painted a horrifying picture. World after world marked as harvested or extinct. Entire civilizations reduced to nothing more than mining operations. The hegemony wasn't just an empire, it was a machine designed to consume all other life. There's more," Kim continued. "They have detailed files on human military capabilities now. They're already planning a counterattack." Captain Anna Petrov worked in the medical bay, treating wounded from both sides of the battle. The injured hegemony prisoners were a revelation. They weren't monsters, just soldiers following orders from a system that viewed conquest as natural law. "Doctor, the alien prisoners are asking to speak with you," one of her medics reported. Petrov approached the bed where a wounded hegemony soldier lay recovering. The being looked at her with eyes that held surprising intelligence and what might have been gratitude. "You saved my life," the alien said through the translation device. "Why?" "Because that's what doctors do," Petrov replied simply. "My name is Thek. I have served the hegemony for 20 cycles, conquered 12 worlds." The alien paused, struggling with concepts that seemed foreign. "I have never seen any species fight like yours." "What do you mean?" "Others surrender when faced with superior force. Your people fought harder when things became hopeless. You chose death over defeat." Petrov nodded. "Some things are worth dying for." "The hegemony does not understand this concept," Thek said. "That is why they will lose." Meanwhile, the reformed hegemony battle line began its final advance. The alien commander had decided that if he couldn't complete his mission to harvest Verdania, he would at least eliminate the dangerous Deathworld species that had interfered. "Incoming transmission from the hegemony flagship," the communications officer announced. Admiral Storm accepted the call, and the reptilian commander appeared on screen again. This time, his cold composure was cracked by rage and something that might have been fear. "You have cost me greatly, Deathworlders. My superiors will not forgive this failure. But I can still claim victory by destroying your fleet." "You're welcome to try," Storm replied calmly. "Your tactics are impressive, but you cannot overcome simple mathematics. I still have more ships than you." Admiral Storm smiled. "Maybe you should count again." As if responding to her words, space around the hegemony fleet suddenly filled with new contacts. Cathara ships, hundreds of them, rose from the planet and emerged from hiding spots throughout the system. But these weren't the same simple vessels that had launched earlier. "Admiral, the Kythera ships have been modified," Lieutenant Chen Okafor reported with amazement. "They're carrying human weapons." Kira Okafor's voice filled the communication channels. "Humans taught us more than tactics. They taught us that courage can be shared. Kythera industrial facilities have been working since the battle began. We now carry fusion missiles and plasma cannons built from your designs." The hegemony commander's expression changed from anger to shock as his sensors detected the true size of the force arrayed against him. The Kythera hadn't just been hiding. They'd been preparing. "Impossible," he whispered. "Plant eaters don't fight." "They do now," Admiral Storm said. "And they learned from the best teachers in the galaxy." The final battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships, battered but unbroken, fought alongside hundreds of Kythera vessels equipped with deadly human weapons. The hegemony found themselves facing not just advanced technology, but something they'd never encountered: two species fighting as one. Commander Kim's boarding parties struck at the hegemony formation from captured ships, creating chaos in their ranks. Pilot Martinez led combined human and Kythera fighter squadrons in attacks that exploited every weakness in alien ship design, but the hegemony had one final surprise. "Admiral, the hegemony flagship is powering up another weapon," Commander Johansson warned. "Different design from the planet killer, but massive energy readings. On the main screen, the alien flagship began to glow with malevolent energy. This weapon wasn't designed to destroy planets. It was designed to sterilize space itself, killing everything within light years." "It's a stellar disruptor." Dr. Morrison's voice crackled over long-range communication from Earth. "Our analysis of captured data shows it can destabilize a star. The entire system would be destroyed." Admiral Storm realized the hegemony commander's final strategy. If he couldn't win, he would ensure that both humans and Kythera died together. The stellar disruptor would turn Verdania's sun into a supernova. "All ships, concentrate fire on the flagship," she ordered. "We have to stop that weapon." But the hegemony had positioned their strongest ships around the flagship. Human and Kythera forces threw themselves against the enemy defenses, but they couldn't break through quickly enough. That's when Kira Okafor made the same choice Captain Torres had made. "Admiral Storm, this is Kira. I am taking my ship on a direct course for the stellar disruptor." "Kira, no. There has to be another way." "You humans taught us that some things are worth any sacrifice," the Kythera leader replied. "My people's freedom is worth my life." Kira's ship, now armed with human fusion weapons, accelerated toward the hegemony flagship. But unlike Torres's lone run, hundreds of other Kythera vessels followed her. "We go together," Kira said simply, "as you humans showed us." The Kythera suicide attack was devastating. Ship after ship crashed into the flagship's defenses, each explosion weakening the shields protecting the stellar disruptor. Kira's vessel reached the weapon just as it prepared to fire. "For Verdania," she transmitted. "For the alliance between our peoples." The explosion destroyed both the weapon and Kira's ship, but it also crippled the hegemony flagship. The surviving alien vessels, seeing their commander's ship disabled and their superweapon destroyed, finally broke and ran. As the enemy fleet jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Storm stood on her bridge surrounded by the silence of victory. The cost had been enormous. Thousands dead on both sides, including heroes like Torres and Kira, who had given everything for others. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Earth," the communications officer reported. President Harrison appeared on the screen, his face showing the weight of command during humanity's first interstellar war. "Admiral Storm, the entire planet, has been watching. You and your crews have made us all proud." "Thank you, Mr. President. But this is just the beginning. The hegemony knows about us now, and they won't make the same mistakes twice." "Then we'll be ready for them," Harrison replied. "Operation Thunderstrike proved that freedom is worth fighting for, no matter the odds." As rescue operations continued throughout the Verdania system, captured hegemony databases revealed the full scope of the threat humanity now faced. The enemy empire was vast, controlling thousands of worlds and trillions of beings. But the databases also revealed something else. Other species under hegemony control who had been waiting for someone to show them that resistance was possible. The war for the galaxy's freedom had only just begun. 3 months after the Battle of Verdania, Ambassador Michael Cross stood in what had once been a hegemony command center. The massive facility on the planet's surface had been converted into the headquarters of something unprecedented in galactic history, a military alliance between species that had never met before the war began. The transformation was remarkable. Kythera engineers worked alongside human technicians, installing communication systems that could handle dozens of alien languages. Former hegemony prisoners, now freed and eager to help, shared intelligence about their former master's empire. "The morning briefing is ready, Ambassador," said his aide, a young Kythera named Tello, who had learned human military protocols with impressive speed. Cross nodded and walked into the main conference room. Around the table sat representatives from 7 different species, all liberated from hegemony control during the past 3 months. Each had their own story of oppression, their own reasons for joining what they now called the Free Worlds Coalition. High Counselor Tala Verdis, the new Kythera leader who had replaced the heroic Kira, called the meeting to order. The tall, graceful being spoke with the authority of someone who had learned leadership in the crucible of war. "We have received troubling intelligence from our deep space monitoring stations," Tala began. "The hegemony response fleet has been detected moving toward this sector." Admiral Storm, now commanding all coalition forces, studied the tactical display with grim concentration. The numbers were staggering. Over 2,000 hegemony vessels, including ships designs they had never encountered before. "How long do we have?" asked General Kane, who had arrived from Earth with additional human forces and military advisors. "Approximately 6 weeks," replied Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the coalition's chief scientist. "But Admiral, these aren't the same ship classes. We fought at Verdania. Our captured databases show these are what the hegemony calls extermination fleet configurations." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. The hegemony wasn't just coming to reclaim Verdania, they were coming to ensure that the dangerous concept of resistance was permanently eliminated. "What's different about these ships?" Cross asked. Dr. Rodriguez activated a holographic display showing sleek, predatory-looking vessels, unlike the bulky ships they had fought before. They're specifically designed to fight Deathworld species. Faster, more maneuverable, with weapons calibrated for targets that refuse to surrender. "They built these ships to fight us," Admiral Storm realized. "Not just us," General Kane added. "Intelligence suggests they're designed to eliminate any species that might inspire others to resist. We've become a threat to their entire system of control." Around the table, alien representatives shifted nervously. The Rilani, a species of advanced engineers, had joined the coalition after human forces liberated their industrial worlds. Their leader, Engineer Prime Vex, spoke with the whistling tones of his people. "The humans have taught us much about warfare, but can we truly stand against such overwhelming force?" Cross looked around the room at the faces, human and alien. That represented the galaxy's hope for freedom. 6 months ago, none of you had ever fought a real war. Look what you've accomplished since then. It was true. The coalition had grown from desperate refugees into a formidable military force. Human tactics and technology, combined with alien innovation and numbers, had liberated dozens of worlds. More importantly, they had proven that the hegemony could be beaten. "The question isn't whether we can win," Admiral Storm said. "The question is whether we can inspire enough others to join us before they arrive." "What do you mean?" Tala asked. General Kane activated another display showing hegemony, territory. Our intelligence operations have identified over 50 species under hegemony control who are ready to rebel. They're just waiting for a signal that resistance is possible. We've already sent that signal, Cross realized. Every world we've liberated, every battle we've won, proves that the hegemony can be defeated. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. Our communication networks have been broadcasting the story of Verdania throughout hegemony space. The effect has been significant. She showed them intercepted communications from across the alien empire. On world after world, subject species were organizing resistance movements. Some had already begun open revolts, inspired by the human Cathara alliance. The hegemony is facing rebellions on over 30 worlds, Rodriguez continued. They're having to divide their forces to maintain control. That's why they're sending the extermination fleet, Admiral Storm understood. They need to crush us quickly before the rebellion spreads further. Talo, the young Cathara aide, spoke up hesitantly. Admiral, there is something else. The children on our world have been asking questions. What kind of questions? Cross asked. They want to know why humans came to save us. They want to understand what makes a species willing to die for strangers. Cross smiled. What have you been telling them? That humans showed us something we had forgotten. That some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The room fell quiet as everyone contemplated the magnitude of what they were attempting. They weren't just fighting a war. They were trying to change the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. There's something else, General Kane said. Earth has approved the construction of the new shipyards here on Verdania. In 6 months, we'll be producing vessels that combine human engineering with alien innovations. Engineer Prime Vex's equipment translated his excited whistles. The new ships will be extraordinary. Human weapons, Cathara sensors, Ralani engines, all integrated into designs optimized for coalition tactics. Admiral Storm studied the ship specifications with professional interest. How many can we build before the extermination fleet arrives? Perhaps 50, Vex replied. Not enough to match their numbers, but enough to give us advantages they won't expect. We're not trying to match their numbers, Cross pointed out. We're trying to show the galaxy that tyranny can be defeated. Dr. Rodriguez brought up a final display that made everyone sit up straight. This is the most important intelligence we've gathered. Deep in hegemony space, their core worlds are experiencing something they've never faced before. Fear. The intercepted communications showed panic among hegemony leadership. For the first time in their history, they faced an enemy that not only refused to surrender, but actually grew stronger with each battle. They're calling us the contagion species, Rodriguez explained. They believe contact with humans spreads some kind of virus that makes other species rebellious, General Kane laughed. They're not wrong. It's called hope. The hegemony doesn't understand hope, Tala said quietly. Their entire system is based on fear and submission. They have no experience fighting an enemy that refuses to be afraid. Cross stood and walked to the window overlooking Verdania's capital city. Below, humans and aliens worked together, building the infrastructure of freedom. Children of different species played together in parks that had once been processing centers for harvested resources. They're right to be afraid, he said. We are contagious. Every world we liberate, every species we free, proves that their way isn't the only way. A new voice joined the conversation as Captain Anna Petrov entered the room. The doctor had been working with freed hegemony prisoners and had insights no one else possessed. I've been talking with former hegemony soldiers, she reported. Many of them want to join us. They've seen what freedom looks like, and they want it for their own people. Former enemies wanting to become allies, Admiral Storm mused. The hegemony really doesn't understand what they're fighting. 6 weeks, General Kane said, returning to the tactical situation. When they arrive, we'll have approximately 400 ships against their 2,000. Impossible odds, Engineer Prime Vex observed. Standard operating procedure for humans, Cross replied with a smile. As the meeting ended and representatives returned to their duties, Cross remained at the window. In the distance, he could see the construction sites where humans and aliens worked together building something unprecedented, a truly free galactic civilization. His communication device chimed with an urgent message from Earth. Long-range sensors had detected something troubling. The hegemony extermination fleet was larger than expected. Not 2,000 ships, but over 5,000. They weren't just coming to crush the rebellion, they were coming to exterminate every species that had joined it. But there was other news, too. The rebellions spreading across hegemony space were larger than anyone had hoped. Over 100 worlds were now in open revolt, and more joined each day. Cross smiled as he composed his reply to Earth. The message was simple but carried the weight of galactic history. Tell President Harrison we're ready. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when free people stand together. Far above Verdania, human and alien crews worked together aboard coalition warships, preparing for the battle that would determine the future of galactic civilization. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy with thousands of years of military experience. But they had something the hegemony had never encountered: the unbreakable will of species that had chosen freedom over safety, courage over submission. The real war was about to begin. The blue light from 3 suns painted the crystal spires of Valara Prime in gentle hues. Elder Keth stood on the highest tower, watching his people move through the floating gardens with the grace their species had perfected over thousands of years. The Valerians had never known war. They had never needed to. Dr. Naya burst through the chamber doors, her delicate features twisted with panic. Her hands shook as she held the scanner, its readings flashing angry red warnings across the transparent. Display. Elder Keth, the long-range sensors have detected them. The Krex Empire, they're only 3 systems away. The ancient leader's pale blue skin grew even lighter. Stories of the Krex had reached them through fleeing refugees from distant worlds. Entire civilizations wiped out. Populations enslaved or simply eliminated. The Krex took what they wanted and destroyed what they couldn't use. How long do we have? Keth asked, his voice barely a whisper. 2 days, maybe 3. Their fleet is massive, hundreds of ships. Keth closed his eyes. The Valerian Defense Force consisted of 12 patrol ships designed for asteroid mining and rescue operations. Against the Krex war machine, they would last mere minutes. Send the beacon, he said finally. Broadcast on all frequencies. Someone in the galaxy must help us. Dr. Naya rushed to the communication array. Her fingers danced over the controls as she composed humanity's first contact with her species. She had no way of knowing that her desperate words would be misunderstood in the worst possible way. This is Dr. Naya of the Valerian Alliance. Our world faces destruction. Unknown hostile forces approach our system. We are a peaceful people with no defenses. Please, anyone who receives this message, we need immediate help. We have valuable scientific knowledge to offer in exchange for protection. Our coordinates are attached. Please hurry. The message shot out across space at faster-than-light speeds, reaching every major communication relay in the sector. 3 days later, massive energy signatures appeared at the edge of the Valerian system. Captain Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderstrike, studying the alien world through the viewscreen. Behind his ship, 47 other vessels of the human battle fleet Prometheus maintained perfect formation. Destroyers, cruisers, and the massive dreadnought UES Retribution formed a wall of metal and weapons. "Sir, I'm not picking up any hostile forces," reported Lieutenant Hayes from the sensor station. "Just the alien ships on the planet." Torres frowned. The alien message had mentioned hostile forces and valuable knowledge. In human experience, that combination usually meant one thing: bait for a trap. Some species lured rescue ships into ambushes, then sold the captured vessels and crews to the highest bidder. "Keep weapons ready but not locked," Torres ordered. Let's see what these aliens really want. On Valara Prime, Elder Keth received the news with a mixture of relief and confusion. Help had arrived, but the readings from their primitive sensors made no sense. 48 ships? He asked Dr. Naya. Are you certain? The energy signatures are enormous. These ships are built for war, Elder. Heavy weapons, thick armor, everything designed for battle. Keth's confusion deepened. But we asked for help. Not an invasion force. Perhaps they misunderstood our message? Commander Reeves materialized on the main view screen as the humans established communication. His scarred face and military bearing made Keth take an involuntary step backward. This being looked like he had spent his entire life fighting. This is Commander Reeves of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We received your transmission about hostile forces and valuable resources. State your intentions clearly. Keth tried to keep his voice steady. Commander Reeves, I am Elder Keth of the Valerian people. We sent a distress call because our world is about to be attacked. We need protection, not interrogation. Reeves studied the alien leader. The creature looked fragile, almost transparent. Its huge eyes and delicate build suggested a species that had never seen real conflict. But appearances could be deceiving. Some of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy looked harmless. You mentioned valuable knowledge in your transmission. What kind of knowledge? Scientific research, cultural exchanges, anything you wish. We only want to survive. Before Reeves could respond, Lieutenant Hayes called out from behind him. Sir, new contacts appearing on the edge of the system. Large fleet, unknown configuration. Torres felt his blood chill as the sensor data flowed across his screen. Over 200 ships, all built like floating fortresses. Their hulls showed scorch marks from recent battles, and weapon ports covered every surface. Those are Krek's ships, Dr. Naya whispered on the open channel. They found us. The lead Krek's vessel was a monster of black metal and red lights. High Pacifier Vex stood on its bridge, studying the unexpected human presence with growing interest. The Kreks had conquered 47 star systems in the past century. They had faced many species, but never humans. What are those ships? Vex demanded of his tactical officer. Unknown design, High Pacifier. Heavy weapons, advanced armor. They're protecting the Valerian world. Vex's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. So the sheep found guard dogs. No matter, we'll collect them both. Back on the human flagship, Commander Reeves made a decision that would change the course of the battle. He had seen enough war to recognize genuine fear when he encountered it. The Valerians weren't predators laying a trap. They were prey, desperate and terrified. All ships, battle stations. Protect the planet at all costs. Elder Keth watched the human fleet move with deadly precision. The ships spread out in a defensive formation around Valara Prime, their weapons coming online with lethal efficiency. For the first time in days, he felt something like hope. But the hope mixed with a growing unease. The humans moved like born killers. Their ships bristled with enough firepower to crack a moon. What kind of species needed such weapons? What kind? Of worlds had forged beings like Commander Reeves? Dr. Naya pulled up the deep space communication logs on her scanner. What she found made her hands tremble. References to humans appeared in dozens of alien databases, always with the same warnings. Deathworld species, apex predators, the beings from Sol who fight like demons. Elder, she whispered, I think we may have called for help from something more dangerous than the Kreks. The first Krek scout ships entered the system, their sensors immediately locking onto the human fleet. Aboard the lead vessel, a young Krek's warrior stared at his readings in disbelief. War Commander, those ships, the weapon signatures match, the old warnings, the ones from the archives. His commander leaned forward. What warnings? The Deathworld demons, sir. The humans from Sol. The legends say they turn war into an art form. The war commander laughed harshly. Legends and children's stories. Ready all weapons. But as more human ships moved into position, each one built like a fortress and armed like a battleship, doubt began to creep into his mind. Perhaps some legends were based on truth. The stage was set. 3 species, each with their own understanding of survival, faced each other across the void. The Valerians, who had never known war, found themselves protected by beings who seemed to know nothing else. The Kreks, confident in their superiority, prepared to face an enemy that defied every assumption they had made. Commander Reeves opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "Remember, people, these Valerians asked for help. We're going to give them exactly what they need. All ships, prepare for engagement." The battle for Valara Prime was about to begin, and none of the participants truly understood what they had gotten themselves into. Admiral Kane stood in the command center of the UES Retribution, watching data streams from across the Valerian system. As the senior human officer, the weight of first contact rested on his shoulders. He had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens before, but never while protecting a species he barely understood. "Admiral, the Kreks are moving," reported Captain Torres from his position at the tactical display. 12 ships breaking off from their main fleet. They're heading for the outer colonies. Kane studied the projection showing the enemy movement. The Kreks ships moved with purpose, ignoring the human defensive line completely. They were going after easier targets. "They're testing us," Kane realized, "seeing if we'll really protect the Valerians or just defend ourselves." On the bridge of his flagship, High Pacifier Vex watched the human response with growing interest. The unknown species had positioned themselves around the main world, but the outer settlements remained vulnerable. Perfect targets to measure their resolve. "Begin the harvest on Colony World 3, he ordered. "Standard procedures. Leave nothing alive." The Kreks attack on Valerian Colony Beta 7 began without warning. The small settlement housed 2,000 civilians, mostly scientists and their families studying rare minerals. They had no weapons, no shields, and no way to fight back. Lieutenant Hayes monitored the colony's desperate transmissions from his post aboard the Thunderstrike. The young officer had joined the fleet to see the galaxy, not to witness mass murder. "Sir, the colony is sending emergency signals. The Kreks they're not taking prisoners." Commander Reeves felt his jaw tighten. He had seen Kreks tactics before, but always from intelligence reports. Watching it happen in real time made his stomach turn. "Admiral Kane, requesting permission to intercept." Kane's voice came through the comm system, heavy with controlled anger. "Granted. Take a squadron and show these bastards what happens when they hurt civilians." 4 human destroyers broke from the main defensive line, their engines blazing as they raced toward the outer colony. But they were already too late to save Beta 7. When the human ships arrived, they found only wreckage and bodies floating in space. The colony's biodomes had been shattered, their atmosphere venting into the void. 2,000 Valerians had died in less than an hour. Hayes stared at the destruction through his view screen, his hands clenched into fists. "How could they do this? They're not even at war with the Valerians." "Because they can," Reeves answered grimly. "The Kreks don't see other species as people. We're all just resources to be harvested." The human squadron found the Kreks raiders still in the area, loading Valerian technology onto their ships. When the human destroyers appeared, the Kreks commander assumed they had come to negotiate. He was wrong. The human attack came without warning or mercy. Torpedo spreads tore through Kreks' shields while laser batteries carved up their armor. The raiders found themselves facing an enemy that fought with cold, calculated fury. In less than 10 minutes, 11 Kreks ships became expanding clouds of debris. Only one escaped, and only because Commander Reeves allowed it. Someone had to carry word back to the main fleet. The surviving Kreks captain raced back to High Pacifier Vex with news that chilled the entire crew. The humans didn't just fight, they destroyed with terrifying efficiency. No warnings, no demands for surrender, just immediate and overwhelming violence. "They move like predators," the captain reported, his voice shaking. Perfect coordination, maximum firepower. They wanted us all dead. Vex studied the tactical recordings from the brief battle. The human ships moved with a precision that spoke of long experience in warfare. Their weapons struck with surgical accuracy, and their tactics showed no mercy for defeated enemies. On Valara Prime, Keeper Lith sat in the Great Archive, pulling up ancient records on her crystalline display. As the keeper of historical knowledge, she had access to information gathered from refugees across the galaxy. What she found about humans made her delicate features pale with fear. The records spoke of a species from a world called Earth, a planet, so dangerous that merely surviving there turned its inhabitants into living weapons. Stories of humans fighting impossible odds and winning through sheer determination. Tales of their armies conquering entire star systems through tactics so brutal that other species preferred surrender to facing them in battle. "They are called Deathworlders," she read aloud to Elder Keth. "Born on a world of predators and natural disasters. They know only violence and conquest." Keth watched through the chamber's transparent walls as human shuttles landed in the capital. The beings that emerged moved with confident strides, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Even in peaceful surroundings, they remained alert and ready for combat. "But they came to help us," Keth protested. "They're protecting our people." "Perhaps," Lith replied quietly. "Or perhaps they're protecting their new territory." Admiral Kane met with the Valerian leadership in the Crystal, spire that served as their government center. The human admiral tried to keep his posture non-threatening, but his scarred hands and military bearing made the aliens nervous. "We need to coordinate our defenses," Kane explained through the translation device. "The Krex will return with their full fleet. When they do, we'll need every advantage we can get." Dr. Naya spoke up from her position near the window. "Admiral, our people are grateful for your protection, but we must ask, what do you want in return?" Kane's expression softened. Slightly, it was a fair question. In his experience, no species helped others without expecting something back. "Right now, we want to keep you alive. After that, we can discuss trade agreements and mutual defense treaties. But first, we need to survive what's coming." Through the chamber's crystal walls, they could see the massive Krex fleet taking position at the edge of the system. Over 200 ships, each one designed for conquest and destruction. The sight made even the hardened human admiral pause. "They outnumber us 4-1, Kane admitted. "But we have advantages they don't expect." Keeper Lith leaned forward. "What advantages?" Kane's smile was cold and predatory. "We're humans. We've been outnumbered before." War Prime Thane materialized on the command deck of the Krex flagship via long-range hologram. The Supreme Krex commander had traveled from the Empire's core world specifically to oversee this conquest. The reports of human intervention had intrigued him. High Pacifier Vex explained these delays. One primitive world should have fallen by now. Vex struggled to keep his voice steady. "War Prime, we encountered unexpected resistance. The humans, they fight differently than other species." "Humans?" Thane's interest sharpened. "The species from the Death World? The ones mentioned in the old archive warnings?" I am not certain, War Prime. But their ships are formidable, and their tactics are unlike anything we have faced." Thane studied the tactical display showing the human defensive positions. Their formation looked solid but not impossible to break. However, something about their positioning bothered him. It seemed too perfect, too much like they wanted the Krex to attack in a specific way. "Very well. Prepare the full assault. If these humans are truly the Death World demons from the legends, then conquering them will bring great honor to the Empire." Back aboard the Retribution, Admiral Kane watched the Krex fleet maneuver into attack formation. His tactical officers reported enemy numbers and weapons loadouts with professional calm, but Kane could sense their underlying tension. This would be the largest space battle humans had fought in over a decade. "Admiral," Captain Torres reported, "all ships are in position." The Valerians have evacuated their orbital stations as requested. Kane nodded. The human fleet hung in space around Valera Prime like a steel net, waiting for the Kreks to make their move. But Kane had one more card to play, something the enemy couldn't possibly expect. Communications, open a channel to all ships. It's time they knew what they're really facing. Throughout the human fleet, the Admiral's voice carried over secure. Channels. People, we're about to fight an enemy that specializes in genocide. They've wiped out entire civilizations, enslaved billions, and they think we're just another species to be conquered. Time to show them the difference between predators and prey. Remember, we don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemies never threaten innocent people again. The Kreks fleet began its advance, confident in their overwhelming numbers. They had no way of knowing that they were about to discover why humans were feared across the galaxy. The real battle was about to begin. General Park stood in the war room aboard the UES Retribution, studying holographic displays that showed every moon, asteroid, and space station in the Valerian system. The grizzled veteran had fought ground campaigns on 17 different worlds, and he knew that space battles were only half the war. Admiral Kane, I need permission to begin orbital bombardment of these positions, Park said, pointing to several asteroid clusters where Kreks ships had taken cover. If we let them establish forward bases, they'll use them to launch raids on civilian targets. Elder Keth, who had been invited to observe human tactical planning, felt his blood chill. Orbital bombardment? General, those asteroids contain mining stations. There may be survivors hiding there. Park's weathered face showed no emotion. Elder, war isn't clean. Every minute we delay gives the enemy time to dig in deeper. Better to lose a few mining stations than lose the entire planet. Dr. Naya stepped forward, her voice trembling with distress. General Park, please. We don't destroy things to save them. There must be another way. The human general turned to face the Valerian scientist directly. His pale blue eyes held the hardness of someone who had made impossible choices before. Doctor, your people called for help. This is what help looks like when you're fighting an enemy that wants to wipe you out completely. We can't save everyone, but we can save your species. Admiral Kane intervened before the argument could escalate. General, use precision strikes only. Target confirmed Kreks positions, but scan for life signs first. We're here to protect civilians, not eliminate them. Park nodded reluctantly. Understood, sir. But when this gets messy, and it will get messy, remember that hesitation kills more people than hard choices. In the crystal spires of Valera Prime, Wisdom Keeper Olin addressed an emergency session of the Valerian Council. The ancient leader had lived through 9 centuries of peace, and the human military methods horrified him more than the Kreks invasion. Honored colleagues, we must consider surrender, Olin declared, his voice carrying the weight of ages. These humans speak of destroying entire regions to achieve victory. How are they different from the Kreks? Keeper Lith stood to respond, her younger voice cutting through the chamber's crystal acoustics. Wisdom Keeper, I have studied the humans' previous conflicts. They fight with terrible efficiency, yes, but they also protect those who cannot protect themselves. The Kreks enslave or eliminate everyone they encounter. But at what cost? Olan demanded. Will we survive their protection only to find our world turned into a fortress? Will our children grow up learning their ways of war? The debate raged through the council chambers, while high above, human and Kreks fleets maneuvered for position like massive predators circling each other. Corporal Mitchell led his squad through the underground tunnels of Valerian Colony Gamma-12, helping evacuate civilians before the Kreks ground forces arrived. The young Marine had been shocked by his first sight of Valerian families, delicate beings with huge eyes and transparent skin, creatures that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale rather than a war zone. Easy there, little guy. Mitchell said softly to a Valerian child who had been separated from her family. The girl couldn't have been more than 5 years old, and she stared up at the armored human with wonder rather than fear. "Are you going to hurt the bad people?" she asked in broken standard, her voice like music. Mitchell knelt down to her level, his weapon still ready but his voice gentle. "That's the plan, kid. But first, let's get you somewhere safe." As they moved through the tunnels, Mitchell's squad encountered their first Krex patrol. The enemy soldiers were massive creatures, built like walking tanks with natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws. They had been herding Valerian civilians into capture nets. The firefight lasted 30 seconds. When it ended, 6 Krex soldiers lay dead, and Mitchell's squad had rescued 47 civilians. The Valerians stared at their rescuers with a mixture of gratitude and terror. "How did you move so fast?" asked one of the adult Valerians. "The Krex were shooting at you, but you acted like you couldn't be hurt." Mitchell reloaded his weapon with practiced efficiency. "Ma'am, on our world, everything tries to kill you from the day you're born. You learn to be hard to kill, or you don't survive long enough to leave the planet." War Prime Thane stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with growing unease. The human fleet had allowed his forces to advance into the inner system, but something felt wrong about their positioning. It was too easy, too much like they wanted the Krex to move deeper into the trap. "War Prime," reported his tactical officer, "the humans have begun bombardment of our forward positions, but their targeting is strange. They're avoiding areas where our prisoners might be held." Thane studied the bombardment patterns. The humans were using devastating firepower but with surgical precision. They destroyed Krex equipment and fortifications while leaving potential civilian shelter areas untouched. "They fight like they care about the primitives," Thane mused. "How unusual. Most species abandon their weaker allies when faced with superior force." His communications officer looked up from her station. "War Prime, we're receiving reports from our ground forces. The human soldiers, they're not fighting like normal beings. They move through our defensive positions like they cannot be stopped." Thane frowned. The Krex had conquered 47 star systems. Their ground forces had never met an enemy they couldn't eventually overwhelm through superior numbers and firepower. "Show me the combat recordings." The holographic display flickered to life, showing helmet camera footage from Krex soldiers engaged with human Marines. Thane watched in growing amazement as human soldiers moved with impossible coordination, their weapons never seeming to miss. Their tactics adapted to every situation with deadly efficiency. In one clip, a single human squad eliminated an entire Krex platoon by using the environment against them. In another, human soldiers fought through wounds that should have been fatal, driven by what could only be described as protective fury. "These are not normal beings," Thane whispered. "The old warnings were true. These are the Deathworld demons." Back on Valara Prime, Dr. Naya worked alongside human technicians to coordinate defensive systems. Despite her fear of their military methods, she found herself impressed by their technical knowledge and their genuine concern for Valerian safety. "Dr. Wells," she said to the human scientist working beside her, "your people fight so violently, but you also try so hard to protect us. I don't understand how both things can be true." Engineer Wells looked up from the shield generator she was repairing. "Doctor, my species evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to be violent because we had to be, but we also learned to protect our own, because survival meant working together." "But we're not your own," Naya pointed out. "We're strangers who asked for help." Wells smiled, and for the first time, Naya saw warmth in a human expression. "Doctor, the moment you asked for protection from bullies, you became our responsibility. That's just how we're built." The main Krex assault began at dawn, Valerian time. Over 150 ships launched simultaneous attacks on human defensive positions, their massive guns lighting up space with destructive energy. Admiral Kane watched the enemy advance from his command center, his expression calm despite the overwhelming odds. Around him, human officers called out targeting data and damage reports with professional efficiency. "Admiral," reported Captain Torres, "the Kreks are committing their entire fleet to the assault. They're not holding anything back." Kane nodded. This was exactly what he had hoped for. The Kreks were brave and confident, which made them predictable. They fought like they expected to win through superior force alone. "Execute battle plan, Omega," Kane ordered quietly. Throughout the human fleet, ships that had appeared to be badly damaged suddenly came back to life. Weapons that had seemed disabled opened fire with deadly accuracy. The entire system revealed itself to be one massive trap, with every asteroid, moon, and space station hiding concealed weapons and defensive systems. War Prime Thane watched his fleet walk into the most sophisticated ambush he had ever seen. The humans hadn't just prepared defenses, they had turned the entire star system into a weapon aimed at his forces. "All ships, withdraw immediately," he ordered, but it was too late. Human ships appeared from behind every large asteroid, their weapons already locked onto Krek's targets. The battle that followed would be remembered by both species for generations. The Kreks fought with the fury of a conquering empire that had never known defeat. The humans fought with the cold precision of predators protecting their territory. But as the casualties mounted and Krek's ships began to explode in brilliant fireballs, Thane realized something that chilled him to his core. The humans weren't just winning the battle, they were doing it while protecting every single Valerian life in the system. These weren't just soldiers, they were guardians, and they had turned the art of war into the science of protection. Captain Luna moved through the corridors of Valerian government complex like a shadow made deadly. Her Special Forces team had detected Krek's infiltrators 3 levels below the main council chambers, and they were moving toward the leaders who had trusted humans with their lives. The Kreks had used some kind of stealth technology to slip past the orbital defenses during the main battle. Now, 12 enemy commandos were hunting Elder Keth and the other Valerian leaders with orders to eliminate them before they could formally ally with the humans. Luna's team reached the lower levels just as the Kreks began their assault on the council chambers. Through her tactical display, she watched the enemy soldiers blast through crystal walls with heavy weapons, their massive forms moving with surprising speed through the delicate Valerian architecture. "Target the leaders, leave no survivors," she heard the Krek's commander order through her translation device. Prime Elder Joran pressed himself against the crystal wall as Krek's soldiers poured into the council chamber. At over 800 years old, he was the senior leader of his people, and his death would throw the Valerian government into chaos at the worst possible moment. "Please," he whispered to the lead Krek's warrior, "we are not combatants. We seek only peace." The Krek's assault leader raised his weapon with cruel satisfaction. "Peace is what you'll have when you're dead, primitive." The shot never came. Captain Luna's team struck like lightning-made flesh. They appeared from ventilation shafts, emergency passages, and maintenance tunnels simultaneously. The Krek's soldiers, trained for warfare against civilized enemies, had never faced opponents who moved with such lethal grace. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, 12 Krek's commandos lay dead, and not a single Valerian had been harmed. Prime Elder Joran stared at Captain Luna with wonder and terror as she checked her weapons with casual efficiency. "How?" he asked simply. Luna looked up from reloading her sidearm. "Sir, we've been fighting things that want to kill us since we learned to walk. These guys were good, but they weren't hunting us on our home ground." High above, the space battle reached its climax as Admiral Kane's tactical masterpiece unfolded in 3 dimensions. Human ships appeared from concealment behind asteroids and moons, their weapons already locked onto Krek's targets. The enemy fleet found itself caught in a crossfire that had been hours in the making. War Prime Thane watched his forces take devastating losses with growing horror. The humans didn't just fight with superior tactics, they fought with an understanding of warfare that went beyond anything the Kreks had encountered. War Prime, his tactical officer reported. We've lost 37 ships. The humans are targeting our command vessels specifically. Thane studied the battle display. The human attacks weren't random. They were systematically dismantling his fleet's command structure, turning his organized assault into a collection of isolated ships fighting for survival. How do they know our tactical protocols so well? He demanded. His intelligence officer looked up from her station with fear in her eyes. War Prime, I believe they're predicting our responses. They seem to understand how we think. On the ground, Assault Marshal Zek led the main Kreks landing force against human defensive positions. The Kreks general had conquered 12 worlds personally, and he expected this battle to follow familiar patterns. The defenders would fight bravely, fall back to prepared positions, and eventually surrender when their losses became too heavy. Instead, he found himself facing an enemy that seemed to exist outside normal military logic. Human Marines didn't retreat when outnumbered. They adapted their tactics in real time, turning every piece of cover into a fortress and every bottleneck into a killing ground. When Krek's forces tried to overwhelm them with superior numbers, the humans simply fought harder. General, reported one of his field commanders, the human position on Hill 47 is supposed to be impossible to defend. They're outnumbered 10-1. But they're not giving ground. Zek studied the tactical display with growing unease. The humans had turned a simple defensive action into an art form. They moved like they could read his mind, anticipating every assault before he launched it. They fight like they know they cannot lose, he muttered. His aide looked confused. Sir? Nothing, Lieutenant. Order the reserve companies forward. We'll crush them with pure numbers. The reserve attack failed like all the others. Human soldiers seemed to multiply under pressure, their weapons never running out of ammunition, their determination never wavering. Zek watched an entire battalion break against a human defensive line held by 30 Marines. Dr. Wells worked frantically in the Valerian research facility, trying to integrate human and alien technology into something that could tip the balance of the battle. Around her, Valerian scientists watched in amazement as she solved technical problems that had puzzled them for years. Dr. Wells, called Dr. Naya from across the laboratory, the power coupling you designed is working perfectly. Our shield generators are operating at 140% normal capacity. Wells smiled grimly as she worked on the next modification. Doctor, when your survival depends on making broken things work, you get very good at improvising solutions. The combined human-Valerian technical team had created something unprecedented, defensive systems that merged the best of both technologies. Valerian precision engineering enhanced human durability, while human adaptive thinking solved problems that Valerian logic couldn't crack. Incoming, called Lieutenant Hayes from the facility's command center. Krek's bombers, heading straight. For us, the modified defense grid came online just as the enemy attack reached them. Weapons that combined Valerian energy focusing with human targeting computers tore the Krek's bombers apart before they could release their payloads. Dr. Naya stared at the destruction displayed on her monitors. The integration worked better than we calculated. The combined systems are almost 3 times more effective than either technology alone. Wells nodded, but her expression remained serious. Doctor, that's the thing about humans. We're really good at making things work together. It's how we survived long enough to leave our planet. In space, War Prime Thane made a decision born of desperation. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by enemies who seemed to anticipate his every move. Only one option remained: ram his flagship into the Valerian homeworld and detonate its main reactor. If he couldn't win the battle, he could at least eliminate the target. "All remaining ships, cover my approach," he ordered. "I will show these Deathworld demons that the Krex Empire does not surrender." Admiral Kane watched the enemy flagship change course toward Valara Prime with cold calculation. The Krex commander was making his final play, and Kane had to admit it was tactically sound. One ship might get through the defensive grid where an entire fleet had failed. "All ships, intercept the Krex flagship," Kane ordered. "Do not let it reach the planet." Captain Torres responded immediately from the Thunderstrike. "Admiral, we can intercept, but at current speed we'll need to ram them to stop them." Kane felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a familiar burden. The Krex flagship was massive, heavily armored, and moving at ramming speed. Stopping it would require sacrifice. "Negative, Captain. All ships maintain current positions. I'll handle this personally." Kane turned to his crew on the Retribution's bridge. These people had followed him through a dozen campaigns, trusted him with their lives more times than he could count. "People, it's been an honor serving with you. Take care of the Valerians for me." Before anyone could protest, Kane engaged the Retribution's emergency override systems. The massive dreadnought's engines roared to life, pushing the ship toward an intercept course with the Krex flagship. But as the two massive ships raced toward each other across the void, Dr. Wells' voice crackled over the comm system from the surface. "Admiral Kane, hold your course, but don't ram them yet. We've got one more trick to try." The combined human-Valerian technical team had been working on something unprecedented, a weapon system that could disable ships without destroying them. If it worked, they could stop the Krex flagship without sacrificing the Retribution. If it didn't work, Admiral Kane was still prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect the innocent world below. The two flagships continued their deadly race toward collision. While on the planet's surface, human and Valerian scientists worked together to prove that sometimes the best weapons are the ones that don't kill. The massive Krex flagship UKS Domination raced toward Valara Prime, with its reactor set to overload, while Admiral Kane's dreadnought UES Retribution closed the distance on an intercept course. In the research facility far below, Dr. Wells and Dr. Naya worked with desperate efficiency to complete their untested weapon system. "The power coupling is holding," Naya reported, her delicate hands dancing over crystalline controls. "But I'm not sure the targeting system can lock onto something. Moving that fast." Engineer Beck, a grizzled human technician, looked up from the makeshift weapon array. "Doc, the targeting computer doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be good enough." Through the facility's transparent dome, they could see the two massive ships growing larger in the sky as they approached their collision point. The combined human-Valerian weapon represented their last hope of stopping the Krex flagship without sacrificing Admiral Kane and his crew. "Charging sequence initiated," Wells announced. 30 seconds to firing solution." On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Kane watched the distance counter tick down with professional calm. His crew worked at their stations with the quiet efficiency of people who had accepted their fate but refused to give up hope. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the Krex ship is definitely set for reactor overload. If they reach the planet—" "They won't," Kane said simply. "One way or another, they won't." Captain Torres's voice crackled over the comm from the Thunderstrike. "Admiral, my ship can intercept them too. You don't have to do this alone." Kane smiled grimly. "Captain, stay in position. If this goes wrong, the fleet will need experienced commanders." War Prime Thane stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the human dreadnought approach with grudging respect. The enemy commander was willing to die to protect his allies. It was the kind of honor the Krex could understand, even from their enemies. "So the Deathworld demons have honor after all," he muttered to his bridge crew. Perhaps the old stories were incomplete. His tactical officer looked up with confusion. "War Prime," Nothing, Lieutenant. Maintain course. If we must die, at least we will take the humans' greatest ship with us. But as the two vessels closed to within moments of collision, Dr. Wells's voice echoed across every human ship in the system. Firing. Now! The combined weapon array on Valara Prime's surface discharged with a flash of pure energy that temporarily outshone the system's three suns. The beam struck the Krex flagship with surgical precision, not to destroy it, but to disable its reactor safety systems and redirect the overload into space. Instead of exploding in a fireball that would have devastated the planet below, the UKS, Domination simply went dark as its power systems shut down completely. The massive ship continued on its course toward Valara Prime, but now it was just a huge piece of metal instead of a weapon of mass destruction. Admiral Kane ordered emergency deceleration, his ship's engines screaming as they fought against momentum and gravity. The Retribution managed to avoid collision by less than 1,000 meters, so close that crew members on both ships could see each other through their viewports. "Well done, people," Kane announced to his crew and the entire human fleet. "Today, we learned something important. The best weapon isn't always the one that destroys." Young Tira, the Valerian child who had spoken with Corporal Mitchell during the evacuation, watched the sky battle from her family's shelter. When the explosions stopped and the shooting ended, she asked her mother the question that would define the relationship between their species for generations to come. "Mama, are the humans good people or bad people?" Her mother looked up at the sky, where human ships were already moving to help disabled Krex vessels instead of destroying them. "Little one, I think they're both. But when they choose to be good, they're very, very good." War Prime Thane found himself a prisoner aboard the UES Retribution, sitting across from Admiral Kane in a clean, well-lit conference room. The human commander had treated him with respect despite their recent battle, something that puzzled the Krex leader. "Why didn't you destroy my ship when you had the chance?" Thane asked bluntly. Kane poured water from a pitcher and slid the glass across to his prisoner. "Because destroying enemies is easy. Creating peace is hard. Which do you think takes more strength?" Thane considered this while he studied the human admiral. Kane looked tired but satisfied, like a soldier who had accomplished his mission despite heavy costs. "My empire will not forget this defeat," Thane warned. "Other fleets will come." Kane's smile was predatory but not cruel. "War Prime, I hope they do. Because when they arrive, they'll find something they've never seen before, a system defended by people who know how to work together." The aftermath of the battle transformed both the Valerian and human understanding of what alliance meant. Elder Keth stood before a joint assembly of Valerian leaders and human commanders, delivering a speech that would be remembered for centuries. 6 days ago, we sent a message asking for help. Keth began, his voice carrying clearly through the crystal chamber. "We expected rescue ships and medical supplies. Instead, we received something we didn't know we needed. Guardians." He gestured toward the human delegation, where Admiral Kane sat beside General Park and Captain Luna. "These beings came to us with weapons of war, but they used those weapons to protect the innocent. They showed us that sometimes peace can only be preserved by those willing to fight for it." Dr. Naya stood to address the assembly. "Through our cooperation, both species learned something valuable. Valerian science combined with human determination created solutions neither could achieve alone. We are stronger together than apart." Captain Torres, representing the human fleet commanders, rose to respond. "Speaking for the Human Colonial Defense Force, we're honored to call the Valerian people our allies. You asked for help, and we gave you what we could, our protection and our friendship." The formal alliance treaty was signed that afternoon, but the real bonds between the species had been forged in the fires of shared danger and mutual sacrifice. 6 months later, the Valerian system had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a true partnership between warrior and protector. Human defensive platforms orbited every major world, while Valerian research stations pushed the boundaries of science and technology. Corporal Mitchell, now promoted to sergeant, helped train Valerian volunteers in basic defensive tactics. His former student, the child Tira, had convinced her parents to let her attend the training sessions. "Sergeant Mitchell," she asked during a break in the lesson, "why do humans fight so much?" Mitchell knelt down to her level, his expression serious but kind. "Tira, we fight because some people hurt others just because they can. If good people don't stop the bad ones, more innocent people get hurt." "But fighting is scary," she pointed out. "Yes, it is. But protecting people you care about is worth being scared." Tira nodded solemnly, then brightened. "When I grow up, I want to be brave like humans." Mitchell smiled. "Kid, you already are. You just need to learn how to use it." In the research facilities, Dr. Wells and Dr. Naya continued their collaboration, developing technologies that merged human practicality with Valerian elegance. Their joint projects had produced defensive systems, medical advances, and exploration technologies that neither species could have created alone. "Naya," Wells said as they worked on their latest project, "do you still think we're too violent?" The Valerian scientist considered the question carefully. "Wells, I think violence itself is neither good nor evil. It depends on why you use it and what you're trying to protect." "And what do you think we're trying to protect?" Naya gestured toward the window, where human and Valerian children played together in the gardens below. "The future. The idea that different people can work together instead of destroying each other." News of the Alliance spread throughout the galaxy, carrying a message that resonated across countless worlds. The Valerians, who had never known war, had learned that sometimes peace required strength. The humans, who had always known war, had learned that strength was most beautiful when used to protect the innocent. When other Krex fleets approached Valerian space over the following months, they found something that stopped them cold: warning beacons broadcasting in every known language. "This system is protected by the Human-Valerian Alliance. We seek peace with all civilized beings. However, those who threaten innocent life will face consequences. Choose wisely." Most Krex commanders chose to find easier targets. The few who didn't learn why humans were called Deathworld demons and why the Valerians were willing to call such dangerous allies their friends. Elder Keth stood once more in his crystal tower, but now he shared the space with Admiral Kane as they watched. Their peoples worked together below. The sight of human and Valerian children playing in the same gardens filled him with hope for the future. "Admiral," Keth said quietly, "when we first met, I was terrified of your people. I thought you would conquer us." Kane nodded. "I remember. You weren't wrong to be afraid. We are dangerous, but not to friends." "Never to friends," Kane agreed. "That's the thing about humans, Keth. We're loyal to the people who trust us with their safety. Sometimes that loyalty looks like violence to outsiders, but to us, it's just love with teeth." The irony of the situation was not lost on either leader. The Valerians had cried for help, and the Deathworlders had sent a war fleet. It had seemed like a mistake at first, but time had proven it to be exactly what both species needed. In the end, the galaxy learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes the most gentle souls need the fiercest guardians, and sometimes the fiercest guardians need gentle souls to remind them what they're fighting for. The alliance between Valara and humanity became a beacon of hope across the stars, proof that different species could not only coexist, but thrive together. They had discovered that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when to fight and when to protect. And in the depths of space, other species took notice. Perhaps, they thought, it was time to reconsider what it meant to ask for help from the beings called humans.